Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode.
Hi, Marsha.
Hi, Kelly.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
We're celebrating.
I know. Happy anniversary.
Yes, 100 episodes.
I know. Can you believe it?
No, not really.
Doesn't it seem like yesterday that we started this? I don't know.
It doesn't seem like that long ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's been a little over 4 years because we started our first episode. I recorded it right around Robert's birthday, and we went on a camping trip. Mm-hmm. And so it was uploaded, and I was trying to find out if everything went well, but I didn't have any service. Then I couldn't see what was happening. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, who's going to listen to us?
I know.
Anyway, and we still haven't run out of things to talk about in 100 episodes.
I think that's amazing. Actually, Marsha, it's not amazing. We haven't run out of things to talk about in how many years have we known each other?
I know. We've never run out of things to talk about. And there's just so many things to do. I mean, It's just opened up an entire world. But before we talk about our last 4 years, should we do
in gory detail?
Yes. Well, I was going to say we should do project updates.
Yeah, let's do that.
But actually, I'm going to do one little housekeeping thing. I did go yesterday, before we start projects, I did go yesterday back to the infamous Edmonds off-leash dog park. Where I had my fall. And I went back, and I was fine. I did not get knocked down. But I also realized I'm super careful now. So I got there with Enzo, and I just sat on the bench. I didn't stand and walk around. Mm-hmm. And then when he did do his business and I had to go pick it up, I was very careful. And you think that I must have acted like I was being followed or something. Because I was like constantly looking behind me. And then someone stopped to talk to me, and I just stood against a log. Thinking like this is my theory now, is if I stand close to a log, they're not going to... I have less chance of them running into me than if I'm standing just in the open sand, because that's where they want to run.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent most of my time sitting on the bench, and I finally just sat on that log. So this is my new plan, is when I go up there, I just sit.
That works, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I did fine. So that was my first trip back since the fall.
Good.
So I had to get back on the horse.
I'm sure you'll get less nervous about it as you go more and more, so...
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad.
So anyway.
And you're feeling fine?
Yeah, I feel fine.
Lots of people were worried about your head.
I know. A lot of people were really worried about me. And I have to admit, I was a little worried about me because I didn't feel right for a long time. Mm-hmm. But now I feel fine. I do feel a little, I had a little bout with a cold, so I kind of recovering from that. And then I had, I've been doing so much work around the yard, and I rented a truck on last Saturday to haul all of the yard waste to the recycling. So Ben and his friend Douglas cut down the big magnolia tree in the backyard. Mm-hmm. So I had to haul that to the recycling, and the camellia, the infamous camellia that I hate and you love, and then the fort had to go. Yeah. And so I called a trash hauler to come and get it. And believe it or not, it's that 1-800 got trash, something like that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a nationwide thing or if that's just a local company, but you just go online and make an appointment, and you can make an appointment as late as midnight. They would come and pick up your trash.
Oh, wow.
Is that amazing to me? So I made it, they came about 9:15 and picked up all the wood from the fort and got rid of it. So this morning I had 6 cubic yards of mulch delivered.
Holy cow, that's a lot of mulch.
I know. Well, in fact, I've had it before, and I remember thinking, that doesn't look like enough. And then after about, 5 hours of hauling that stuff, you're thinking to yourself, why did I get all
Yes.
It's way too much. But no, I want it because I'm going to put in some lawn, and I'm going to fill up the flower beds, and so I have a lot of work. I'll use it all. And I was going to start moving some of it today, and I decided not to. I took the dog for a walk and worked on projects, and here we are.
All right.
So it'll wait till next week. I'll do the mulch. But anyway, so I'm feeling fine. I've been getting lots of exercise, and I feel good.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
When you wake up sore in the morning, it's not from having fallen; it's from all of your yard work.
Yeah, all my yard work.
And that's better than having it be what a friend of mine calls a sleep injury.
A sleep injury? Oh, like when you sleep funny and your neck hurts or something?
Or just from being old when you wake up. You know how the older you get, the more when you wake up your body hurts. I always think it would be better to, when you wake up and your body hurts, it's because you did something.
Yeah, you did something, yeah.
Not just because you got injured in your sleep. Because you're old.
Yes. Well, that's true. Yeah, that's a good injury, a good sore.
Yes.
Because you've been working in the garden or doing something athletic. But anyway. All right, projects.
Okay. Well, you said you were working on projects. Do you want to start?
Yes. Well, I can start. I've been working on the Slacktide Scarf. I've done probably 18 inches. Probably.
Okay.
So it's coming along. I've been working on that, and I've been sort of working on that when I take a break. Oh, I should say the yarn is the Concentric by Hiku. And so I've been when I take breaks from my Afterthought heel socks, I work on this scarf. Because it goes pretty quickly because it's on 10.5 needles, and it's kind of splitty because, I was talking in the last episode how it's 4 singles, but they're not plied together.
Oh, right.
They're just, and so you have to be really careful that you don't, especially the part where you knit 2 together. On one side, you knit 2 together, and then you turn over, and on the other side, all of those knit 2 togethers, you then knit through the front and through the back. So that's what gives it this sort of lace waffly look.
Okay.
So you do have to be careful because it does split. But anyway. But my big project I've been working on is the Afterthought heel socks. And I have some things to say about it. So one of the episodes I was talking about, a listener had said that she advised against after heels because they're not as sturdy, right? Because they don't have that heel flap that...
Right, the slip one, knit one, heel flap.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things. Also, and this is what I was talking about in that couple, I think it doesn't matter what episode it was in, but the Afterthought heels, my understanding is that you don't have as much room for your arch. So I was saying that you... I was reading that you just knit 10 rows of stockinette and then start shaping for the heel, or do short rows. But where I am now, I'm just knitting a big long tube, and I have 23 inches so far. I have a 23-inch long tube.
Okay.
It's easy knitting, but it's boring. And that's why I have to stop every so often and take a break and go knit on this scarf, because it's just around 23 inches of stockinette on size 1 heels. Yeah. So, okay. And so just about the math. So I watched the video tutorial about how to do this. And so what you do is you take the math part of it is you take the length of your foot. In this case, my brother's foot is 11 inches, and then and the length of the leg. And he wants it to be 11 inches, to go up 11 inches up his leg.
Right.
And so you add those two numbers together, so that's 22. Then he wants a contrasting cuff, so I'm going to make that 1 inch. So then you subtract 1 inch. And then she said you subtract 2 inches for the toe and 2 inches for the heel. So that's a total of, 5 inches? So then that makes each tube each sock needs to be, or each sock tube needs to be 17 inches. And so if I'm doing 2 of those that I'm then going to cut apart, it needs to be 34 inches long.
Right.
So I have, I don't know, do the math. I have 11 inches to do. If I have to do 34 and I've got 23 right now, I have to do another 11 inches. And then I'll have to figure out how to cut it apart. So what I'm going to say about this, I already right now, I don't like Afterthought heels.
You haven't even done it yet, but...
And I haven't even done them. And this is what I don't like about it. What my first thing really my only thing I would say about it right now is when we had an episode where we talked about how we knit our socks, and I always do top down. I do the heel flap. I don't know. Some people, don't they call that like a Dutch heel or something where I don't know, where you make the heel flap?
I don't know. I just call it a heel flap and gusset.
Yeah, I just do it that way. But what I've always said is that, you do ribbing for the cuff. When you get tired of that, you do the stockinette, just the straight stockinette down the leg. When you get bored with that, it's time to do the heel flap.
Right, exactly.
And then the shaping for the heel, and then you have to do the gusset. And when you're tired of all that fiddly stuff, it's time to do straight stockinette down to the toe. And then when you get bored with that, it's time to do the toe now. This is now going to be 34 inches of
the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just in terms of... but the other thing, too, is once I finish it, my 2 socks will be pretty much done. All I have to do is the heel and the toe and add ribbing for the... I mean, it'll go... And I don't remember now what day I started this. I think it was the 3rd or 4th of October I started this. And what is today? It's the 24th.
Yeah.
So say it's like 20 days.
Yeah. So it's fast.
It's going pretty fast. So it's kind of monotonous, but I will have 2 socks.
People who like doing plain vanilla socks with the Afterthought heel, I think one of the reasons they like them is because they find it to be fast. And also they don't have the problem of, oh my God, this is so boring. Just please let me get to a heel flap and gusset.
Well, and I'm having to think so much, too. I've been doing a lot of research online and watching other tutorials, and it's sort of making me anxious and nervous because there's the people who are in the Afterthought heel camp, and those are in the never do an Afterthought heel camp.
Right.
And it, yeah, so I sort of feel anxious about it, which is ridiculous. It's just knitting and it's just a sock. But I feel kind of anxious about the math and anxious about how this is going to work out since it's a gift.
Well, and the one that I was making, that when I did that, because I've only done 1 pair of Afterthought heel socks, and I wasn't making them for myself. I knew they were going to be too big for me because they were too big around. They were too baggy. And I think that was because they were all stockinette, and I usually do something else that's patterning that sucks it in a little bit. But I was really concerned about where to put my heel compared to where the toe was. And because I didn't feel like doing all that research at the time, I just went ahead and put the heel in before I was done with the foot. And then once I had the heel in, that gave me an idea how much further I needed to go before I put the toe. But if I had made it all the way to the toe, I don't know, like, where do you put the heel? Right? Where do you make that cut? I don't have those measurements, and I know there are. I'm sure you've looked. I'm sure you've looked at that. Like, how do you know what the measurement is for where to put the heel?
Yes, and the tutorial talks about, and I haven't gotten to that part yet. What she was saying is, though, the same thing is you do the heel first, because if you have put it in the wrong place,
right,
you can add knit more and then do the toe,
or knit or rip out
or unravel some and do the toe.
Yeah, but I know there are. I don't know, I want to say a formula, but I don't know that it's actually a formula, but I know there is a way to figure out where the heel should go. based on how long your foot
and
is.
my understanding is actually, I take it back because I do know what she said in the tutorial is you take the length of your foot from heel to toe.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's 11 inches for my brother, and subtract 2 inches for the toe. And then, and 2 inches for the heel. So I guess what I'm saying is it would be, I'm going to, so where I've done the provisional cast on, that's going to be where my toe is. I'm going to add 2 inches onto that, right? And so then I'm going to measure down 9 inches, and that's where my cut is going to be for my heel.
Oh, and then that'll give you the extra 2 inches. No. Yeah, see, I know lots of listeners are out there going, no, that's not how you do it.
They're yelling out loud, no, that's not what you do.
And I'm sure it's not difficult. I've just never looked it up, and I've never figured out. Because when you do the heel, when you do the heel cup, you're actually putting in some of the foot length, right? So from the back of your heel to some point where your Afterthought heel stops, there's some inches there, and then there's the 2 inches for your toe. So yeah, I know there's a way to figure it out. I know lots of people do them. I know it's probably not even difficult. It's just I don't know it, and I didn't want to figure it out, so I just put the Afterthought heel in, and then I put in the toe.
And this is how I feel, Kelly. I'm doing this because we had this damn learn along.
And you have to damn learn something.
But I wish I had learned something easier, like differential equations.
Oh my goodness, Marsha.
Anyway, clearly I need to do more research, and if anybody hears this, and you can please
point her in the right direction.
No,
yes.
Don't do that. Just send me a message or something. So the other thing I wanted to say about the sock is I wanted to make contrasting toes and heels and cuff. And so I got together with 2 listeners recently, and we went to the fiber gallery, and they had these little mini skeins that were only 50 yards each that I wanted to get, but they didn't have enough of one color. So I just started looking at skeins, full skeins, and I ended up buying a skein of a teal color. It's the Knitted Wit Victory Sock. In the colorway, I love this. It's called Buckle My Shoes.
Oh.
But I bought a skein of that, and showed it to my brother this weekend, and he doesn't like it. And so, remember I said in another episode that I needed to start knitting for people, because if I just knit for myself, I use things from my stash, but I still have it in the same, I still have it in my house, just in a different form. So I start knitting for other people. This is why I don't knit for other people, because they start making demands. So I really thought about whether I wanted to buy it or not, because it's beautiful, but it's 420 yards, and I'm not going to, it's just heels and toes, I'm not going to use that much. So I'm back to the drawing board now. He's rejected the color, and I have to go find something else.
Oh, dear.
Yes. So this is not the socks' fault, but I'm beginning to hate these socks.
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So that's what's going on with my socks, and it'll be interesting to see how they turn out. I am really curious, even though I'm being kind of negative about them. I am kind of curious how they're going to turn out, and do I really like these Afterthought heels when they're done?
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
I think once you have the formula for figuring out where does the slice for the heel go. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think once you know that, and you can just always say, okay, this is the length of foot, so this is where I put my heel slice. I mean, I think the actual process of knitting them in is fine. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The boredom factor of gigantic tubes, you multiplied it by saying you're going to do Afterthought everything, right? And just make one long tube. I still think it's a little boring to do even a 1 foot long tube or 1 sock long tube is a little bit boring because I like how it breaks things up, having all that different stuff in it. But yeah, well, lots of people do it. You might like it, but it hasn't started out with a very...
Yes, I was going to say never say never, but I don't think I'll ever do another Afterthought heel, only because of the long tube thing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, this is not a very auspicious first time based on what you've said so far.
Yeah. The other project, and I haven't started it, but I just wanted to mention it, is, and I don't think I'm the only one, but when I saw this pattern on Ravelry for Rabbit by Claire Garland, the little from the Woodland collection, I had to have that rabbit. I bought that pattern. It was free for a while, and I didn't get it then, but I did go and buy the pattern. And I was looking through my stash for yarn, and I finally thought, you know what? I love that rabbit so much. I just want the yarn that she used. So, and I ordered the yarn. And what's interesting when I actually started reading the pattern is she uses 2 different colors that she holds together. And that's why I think the rabbit looks so cute. He has that very heathered quality to him.
Yeah.
It's because she's holding the 2 colors together. So it's actually a total of 6 colors that I needed. And she uses drops Flora and drops Alpaca. And I went to, remember Kelly, Nordic Mart?
Oh, yeah.
Nordic Mart in San Luis Obispo. I went on their website and I was able to get 5 of the 6 colors through them. And so I've got them. They're sitting right here. And then you also need a gold color for his nose and his front legs. They didn't have that color, so I that's coming from the UK. I ordered it from, I've never heard of this, but people who live in the UK probably know this company. What's it called? A Wool Warehouse. And in the UK, so that's going to be here. It said it takes about 2 weeks. And it's funny because the ball of yarn is £1.88, and I paid £2.99 for shipping.
Yeah.
So as soon as that yarn comes, and I think I need to finish the socks before I can start this rabbit, but just reading through the pattern, I think it's one of the patterns that I will have to just sit at the dining room table with a ruler or a piece of paper to mark each row, and then as I do each row, tick it off.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't leave the house with the rabbit. He can't leave the house until he's completed because it may not be that complicated when I actually start knitting on it, but the whole pattern is 16 pages long.
Oh well, yeah,
because he's not a stockinette tube.
Exactly. This is the antidote for your boredom, and when you are complaining, we'll remind you.
Yeah.
Well, these are darling, and I was just looking on her pattern page, and she has a wild rabbit. Mm-hmm. You might have to make a whole family of them, Marsha.
I know, and then because you sent me the text to the link of that lop-eared.
And then, there's a Holland lop rabbit that's really cute. And then there's a baby bunny. The Holland lop has the most darling face. Yeah,
I might have to make a whole...
a rabbit tree.
What's a rabbit? What's a group of rabbits?
I don't know, but like people who have rabbits, it would be like a rabbit tree. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, a herd of rabbits? It's not a flock of rabbits.
A passel? A bushel?
Make a whole passel of rabbits. A run of rabbits.
A run of rabbits. Anyway, and it's so funny because we were laughing about this before, is that I have never, ever had the urge to knit a toy or stuffed animal of any kind, but this rabbit, there's something about it, he's just so naturalistic looking that captivated me. Now, I may not feel that way when I'm knitting it, but he's just so cute, and I don't think I'm not alone because a lot of people, the comments on the pattern are like, he's irresistible. So
they are really. She has some really nice patterns of these woodland creatures. Well, and I wasn't a toy knitter either, but when I saw the octopus, I had to put it in my queue. It took me a while to actually get to knitting it, but there was no way I was not making that octopus. So I know exactly how you feel. Crazy, but the heart wants what the heart wants.
Yes. So that's it for me on projects.
Okay.
How about you?
Well, I'm still working on the sweater, and I'm to the point in the collar band where I do short rows. I haven't started the short rows yet, but I'm at the point where I need to start doing those short rows. I'm just now hoping that I can get the collar band finished without running out of yarn, because I am probably going to have to order more of the chickadee. So, but it won't be the same dye lot.
Right.
So I would prefer to use the new dye lot in the sleeves and be able to finish the collar with what I have. So I'll see. But I decided not to skimp on the measurements and just follow what the pattern said to do. So now I'm at the short rows part. I think I'm pretty I don't know how many more rows there are after I start the short rows, but I'm pretty close to being finished with that collar band. So then I'll start the sleeves and probably order a ball of yarn. I made the sweater longer in length than it maybe needed to be, or that the pattern called for. Because you remember I was doing all this hocus pocus about how I was going to have enough, even though I had like 100 yards too few. No pockets, no folding over the sleeve cuffs, et cetera, et cetera. But I ended up making the medium instead of the small, and I ended up making it longer. So it's a nice long cardigan. It's going to be very warm and comfortable. So I'm happy. I'm not at all unhappy that I need to buy an extra ball of yarn. It's just a matter of figuring out how to incorporate it.
Yeah.
Based on how different it is from the dye lot I currently have. Yeah. So just a little challenge to add to my others. So that's moving along. It feels like it's going really slowly. I think mostly because it's 1x1 rib. And it's been 1x1 rib for like 50 some rows. And the rows, remember, are not like the 1x1 rib at the top of a sock. It's 1x1 rib all the way from the very bottom of your sweater all the way up and around your neck and to the very bottom of the other side. So it takes me a long time to do one row. And I don't even mind ribbing. I'm just bored of it. A lot of people hate ribbing.
Tube. It's like my tube. You have your own version of my tube.
It is. It's so I'm really glad to be at the point where now I start doing some short rows, because that will be a little more interesting than just plain 1x1 rib. Although it would have been nice if the interesting part wouldn't have happened right at the point where we needed to record. All my projects are at a part where I can't work on them and record. So I'm not working on anything today while we record.
I'm knitting on my tube.
Good, I'm glad. And then I have 2 new patterns that I've cast on. One of them is the Humblebee Socks, and that's a pattern by Sarah Pomegranate. She does the Yarns at Yin Hu podcast.
Right.
And she gave me this pattern as a gift, which was really nice. And so I'm making them. And I've just gotten to the part where I need to start doing the bees. It's kind of like a cable stitch. It's like a stitch that goes in a little, like a stitch goes out one direction and the other stitch goes out the other direction, and they get knit in the wrong order. So they look like little wings sticking out. But I haven't gotten into the rhythm of it yet, so I can't be knitting on it while we podcast.
Are they on your project page?
I have no picture on my project page yet. I haven't taken a picture of them because, well, there's hardly anything to see. I knit the cuff, and then I just started doing those little bee stitches.
Okay.
So, but it's a nice pattern. It has those little bees all along it and has a little detail down the side of the pattern. It's pretty fun. It's just I've just started. I've literally only done one row of the bees. And so, or one repeat of the bees. So I'm just, you know how you get into a rhythm and you see the logic of a pattern and then you don't have to look at the pattern anymore.
Right.
And I'm not to the point where I have that rhythm and logic in my head.
I'm looking at the
pattern page.
The pattern. Okay, since we just had this conversation about socks, the heel is really interesting.
Oh, okay. So I haven't looked at that yet. I might just, I was planning to just do my regular heel, but let me look at them. Oh, it's the double gusset or something.
I've never seen that before.
Socks.
So it's.
I am going to try that because I've been wanting to try that gusset.
So people don't. How would you describe that to listeners if they don't know what this is? It's like there's two sets of decreases.
Right. So on the bottom of you have the gusset decreases are on the bottom of the foot instead of on the side, and there's two sets of them. So if you look at the bottom of the foot, like the toe is on the, so you're looking at the bottom of someone's foot and the toe's on the bottom and the heel's at the top. Right at the top of the heel, there's like two V's of decreases. And then it also has ribbing around the middle part of the foot.
Yeah.
To kind of suck in the arch a little bit. I am going to do that. I had forgotten about that. I do want to do that. But I like the little bee stitches. They look like little wings. Little bee wings.
Little bees in flight on your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cute.
And I'm making them in a really pretty color. I think I talked about this before. I bought a skein of Duran Dye Works in a color called Sunflower. It's a nice gold and brown color. So they're perfect. The color's perfect.
Yeah. Nice.
So I started those. And then I started another pair of socks. I started another pair of Argyles.
Oh, okay.
Do you hear my little bobbins?
Yes, I do. And I'm looking at your project page. No photo.
There's no photo yet.
Your
So I'm using. I'm doing an experiment. I'm using the skeins of variegated yarn that I got at Stitches this year. Both of them are Leading Men Fiber Arts, and one of them is a blue, kind of a pale blue with it has like a brown kind of glazing over the top. Or maybe it's the reverse, but it's one of those yarns where the colors are really layered on top of each other. It's kind of a pale blue and brown. And so that's one of the diamonds. And since I'm doing the elongated diamond, so there's really only 3 diamonds. There's one on the front and back of the leg, and then one diamond on the top of the foot. So the front of the leg diamond is this blue-brown color. And then the back of the leg and the foot diamond is another Leading Men Fiber Arts color called, what is it called? Oh, the first color is called something like This Ain't My First Rodeo. And the other one is called Independent Will. And it's green and brown, a little darker than the other one, but still fairly light. And then, so that'll be the diamond on the back of the leg and top of the foot. And then the crisscrosses are a blue and gray and brown variegated from Western Sky Knits. I got them all at Stitches last year thinking I would make socks, but not thinking I would use them in an Argyle sock. But then I got the idea, what would it look like to do Argyles with variegated yarn? So I am doing the Argyles with variegated yarn, but I'm not throwing all caution to the wind, I have a solid color background. So the main color, cuffs and the main part of the sock, and probably the heels and toes will all be, it's a brown Cascade Heritage sock in a brown color.
Okay.
So they're looking pretty good, but I mean, I like the colors, but I think I got off somewhere in my stitch count. Actually, I'm looking at it right now, and I can see where I got off on my stitch count. My diamond didn't progress diagonally the way it should have. So I have to rip back a few rows and fix that, and then I think I'll be back on track. So those are my 2 new projects, which it's really nice to have new projects. I've had the same projects for ages and ages.
Yeah.
I need to do a better job of like staggering them, so I always have something new. That's the problem if you clear out your whips and start fresh. You need to start like different projects that have different lengths to them.
Right. Yeah.
So I need to get back on a staggered schedule, so it's more interesting to listen to me babble about my projects.
Yes. So now, is that it for projects?
That's it.
Okay.
Well, Marsha, now that we've gone through our project updates, let's talk a little bit about our podcasting journey that we've had over the last 100 episodes.
Yes.
So I'll start because I think I was probably the first one who was actually listening to podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah, it was 2012. And I really don't remember how I found my first knitting podcast, how or why. I wasn't really using Ravelry much. In fact, my first projects that I actually entered into Ravelry were in the fall of 2012, I think. And so I wasn't using it to keep track of my projects, really. I wasn't doing anything with the forums. I think I mostly looked at it for errata. And then I discovered I could buy patterns on Ravelry, and so that kind of started me. But I started listening, and one of the first ones I listened to was Stash and Burn. And I remember sitting in the spare room, and I was playing it on the computer because I didn't even know about podcast apps on the phone. I was playing it on the computer and then clicking from the their little player to the patterns they were talking about on Ravelry, and looking at the patterns and knitting and so that's when I started listening to podcasts, and kind of got some inspiration from that about the direction that I wanted to go. And I'll talk more about the inspiration in a minute, but that whole time period of listening to podcasts was, I'm sure you remember Robert calling you.
Yes.
I'd had a job change that was exciting for the first year, and then things went badly wrong, let's just say.
Yes.
And I had only planned to do the administrative position for, at most 3 years. That was my, do it for 3 years, and if I love it, I'll keep doing it. But my plan was that I really probably wasn't going to love it, and I was just going to do it for 3 years and then go back to teaching full time. Well, after 1 year, I really did not love it. And that was just so foreign to me because I've always really liked my work. And so I was just in a really bad state. And so I was having, that difficulty at work, and I felt really lonely for some creative community. And so then I found podcasts, and I started listening to other people talking, blathering on about their knitting. And I just became obsessed with being in some way part of that conversation, listening as a listener first, just like being part of a conversation about this creative thing that I was doing that was kind of saving me. Yeah,
because, just knitting or any kind of fiber arts or any kind of craft if you're just doing it by yourself, it can be a little isolating because there's nobody to share your victories with, or
yes, your long boring tube.
Complain about your long boring tube, or or talk something through.
Yeah.
Or get new ideas, creative ideas, So
it was like, wow, when I found this, it was like, oh my gosh, I can go to this really happy place and listen to all these people talk about their knitting and get ideas. And I found patterns. I put patterns in my queue. I started using my queue on Ravelry. I started putting my projects in. I started looking at other people's projects. And all of a sudden, it was like I had a knitting group. So that was kind of the origin story for me. And then the other thing, as I started listening, I kept thinking, I've been knitting, and spinning for sure, a lot longer than a lot of the people who were not knitting, but spinning a lot longer than the people who were talking about it on podcasts, and I'm pretty sure I have something to add to the conversation. And so that got me started thinking about having a podcast. But then the other thing was everything, and this is kind of related to when I brought it up to you, everything was superwash merino. Everyone was knitting with superwash merino. Everyone was spinning braids of superwash merino. It was all superwash merino everywhere. And, as a spinner, there's a lot of other breeds besides merino, and there's a lot to be said for those other breeds and their characteristics, and just the different ways you can get wool, all the way from the fleece to carded preparation to commercial top in a braid. It was like there's experience that I have with these other avenues that doesn't seem to be out there, or at least there were a few podcasts about sheep spot. Sasha Torres had a spinning podcast. It was called The Spin Doctor, and there was another spinning podcast too, but the knitting podcasts were by far the larger group of podcasts. So that got me thinking about it, and that was when I finally said to you, hey, what do you think?
And I said, what's a podcast?
Right. Yeah. I still have no recollection of how I discovered them. It wasn't through the podcasting app. It was from players on people's websites, but I don't remember how I even got to the websites. So, yeah. So what did you think when I asked you that?
I was a little intimidating because I thought I have nothing to say. Who's going to listen to me?
Right. You have lots to say, but who is going to care? That's kind of what I thought. Really.
Yeah. Who's going to care? How are we going to find things to talk about in every episode? I didn't understand how any of this is going to work, and how are people going to find us? The whole thing was just baffling to me. And mostly it was just like, I don't know. Mostly my feeling was, I don't know how we're going to come up with content, and that is sort of exhaust me thinking about coming up with content, given all the other things I need to do.
I have a tendency to do that to you, Marsha. I think that
yes,
I bring up things. In a lot of things. Yes, I bring up things that make you feel exhausted. It's my job to exhaust Marsha.
No, I just sort of think I just don't know how we're going to do this. We live in different states.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how this is going to work. That was really what I thought, and it just made me kind of tired thinking about it. And now, this is the least exhausting part of my life. It's the most invigorating part of my life.
Yeah.
It really
That's
is.
a really good way to think about it. I haven't thought about it like that, but you're right. It really is invigorating.
Well, and I know you have more things to say, but I was just going to interject too. Just some of the things that this idea of it invigorating is what I find with the podcast. At first, this was intimidating, but now it's not. But I find that I really am pushing productivity. Because I have to report in every 2 weeks about what I've done. I cannot not knit in 2 weeks. because I know I have an audience that I have to report into, whether they care or not.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that people would stop listening if I just said one episode. I didn't knit at all for 2 weeks. But it's true. My production has really gone up.
Yeah.
Just because I have to report in, and then the other thing too is interesting is that I've met so many people. That when you were talking about that you had a knitting group, but it was all you never met anyone.
Right. It was
right.
Well, and they didn't know it was at first it was like a one-way knitting group, right? Because I wasn't participating on Ravelry or anything. Mm-hmm. I just would listen to the podcasters talk, and I felt like I was part of a conversation, even though I was only on the listening end. Yeah. Right.
But now we're actually meeting people.
Yeah.
In the flesh.
Yeah. Well, and I spend quite a bit of time. Maybe I should be embarrassed about how much time, but I spend actually quite a bit of time interacting with people online, which is just as real. It's not the same, but it feels just as real. I mean, I say to Robert. Robert says, "What are you doing in the morning while I'm having my coffee?" And I'm like, talking to my friends. Yeah. So.
Yeah. But just think of all the meetups we've gone to and the festivals we've gone to, and we end up. You went to Lambtown, and how many people did you see there that we've met?
Yeah,
over
lots
the years?
of people. Yeah,
lots of people. So
and Stitches every year now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I got together with Kristen and Julie the other day that it started out as listeners that we now know. And then I would say the creativity part of it too.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I've talked about this before, before Ravelry, before the podcast, if I wanted to knit something, I would just go to the yarn shop and look at yarn and then try and find a pattern to go with it. Or I'd find a pattern and try to find yarn to go with it. And now the possibilities are endless because of Ravelry.
Yeah.
But I think also with the podcast and the different contests we're having, seeing what other people are doing.
That's really inspiring.
There's so much inspiration with what people are doing. The combo spin thing that I got, I'm now still continue to be addicted to. That's because of the podcast. Mm-hmm. We started talking about it, and then I started looking up things and images, and that all came out of the podcast.
Right, right. And it does, from the creativity end, and thinking about your combo spin, how it almost like became a study, right? Mm-hmm. Like, let's try it this way, let's try it that way, let's change this, let's try that. That is something that I probably wouldn't be doing nearly as much of that as I am without the podcast. I mean, there's a reason that people don't learn heavy duty things on their own, and they go to school for it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's online or it's face to face, when you're taking classes, you have the community of your classroom to kind of help you keep on track. Mm-hmm. And I think, like doing these Argyle socks, I did the one in DK weight, and then I did the first fingering weight one, and then I did the sport weight ones out of the Toomey wool, and now I'm experimenting with variegated Argyles, and that sort of wanting to experiment with the same thing but in different formats, kind of being intentional about the experimentation. I'm not sure how much of that I would do if it was just me. Yeah. I mean, I probably would do some of it if it was just you and me talking, because I'd get excited and then I'd want to. But if it was just me and no one else, I don't know that I would do that. Yeah. Some of my knitting is just to keep my hands busy, right? Yes. And some of it is, I want this thing, this octopus.
Or your bee pillow.
Or I want the bee pillow. Exactly. Yeah. And then some of it is sort of intentional craft to get better at something or to test myself at something. There was a woman I met at the the combing class that I went to at Lambtown, and she every year takes a fleece, prepares the fleece. She spends like 10 months getting the fleece all prepared and spun, and then she spends the remainder of the year and some of the time while she's getting the fleece ready, kind of designing and then knitting a sweater. Mm-hmm. She does that every year. Her sweaters are gorgeous. She had pictures of one that had been best in show at some fair. I can't remember what fair it was, but absolutely gorgeous colorwork, Fair Isle, experimental. I'm not there. I don't think I'll ever be there.
Yeah.
But I'm closer to that because there's community to talk it through with. I can imagine myself not doing that, and not forever, not every year I do this. But, I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to weave with more than 4 shafts. I'm going to do Argyle in every possible combination I can imagine. I'm going to do a combo spin. You did that with these colors and those colors. Mm-hmm. All of that, I think, is really probably because of the community.
Yeah.
That intentionalness of it.
Yeah.
So, I occasionally think it would be fun to do a master knitter. And then
I do too. I think of that occasionally.
Yeah. And then I think, oh, you're probably crazy. You probably would hate it because of all the stuff you have to do. Mm-hmm. But if it was a few people all working towards it, or like this knit along I'm doing, this Niebling knit along that I'll be doing next year. I don't know, you can tackle higher aspirations, right? With friends along.
Yeah.
So I think
friends along. Oh, I like that. Friends along.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's, I think, one of the big pluses of the podcast. And then the other thing, getting back to the kind of my reasons for wanting to do it, this idea of inspiring knitters to use something other than superwash merino was kind of in the back of my mind too. As I was thinking about doing a podcast, and then also thinking about a shop that would do the same thing, that could inspire knitters to use something other than superwash merino and sort of diversify their knitting, so that those breeds that are not in as high demand could be in higher demand and not be so endangered. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of the thought about the shop. So do you remember when I brought it up to you about the shop?
Yes, I do.
And did you feel exhausted? Did you think I was crazy?
I did not. Well, actually, to be completely honest, I did not feel exhausted when you brought up the topic of it until I started dyeing some yarn. And then I went, oh my God, this is exhausting. But then the first time I thought, I just can't see doing this like on a grand scale. Mm-hmm. And now I realize it's not that hard. I mean, because when we get together, we dye yarn, and it's highly invigorating.
Yeah.
So it's just compelling and exciting, and but that's also not knowing enough about something to realize that it's not exhausting. It's invigorating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to say about the shop is I think one of the things we had said from the very beginning was and I wrote this down, is to connect the end user with the producers. Yeah. So to really get these really interesting fibers into the hands of knitters and crocheters and weavers, that was really important to us. And the other thing I would say about the podcast is I never thought I would actually be planning vacations around fiber.
Oh, yeah.
And I just like Kelly, I never thought I would actually plan a vacation around my dog. But But now I'm actually like, oh, we're going to go down to I haven't been down to the Washington coast for years, but now we go to the Washington coast. We've been down there like 6 times because of the dog, to let the dog run on the beach.
Yeah.
Same thing. We went to Scotland for the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which is not something I would have ever done before. I'm now planning my trips around stitches and knockers, and we met in Portland.
Right, we did that yarn
crawl. For the yarn crawl, and we did the San Luis Obispo yarn crawl, and so that's it's kind of that 4 years ago. Prior to 4 years ago, I would not have been doing that. Yeah, planning vacations around yarn.
Right. Well, thinking about the idea of connecting the growers with the community, there's 2 things that stand out in my mind as kind of the days that things kind of clicked. Like I had this idea of the shop, kind of a vague idea, and then there's 2 things that kind of clicked them into place in a way that, okay, I know what the vision looks like. It's not blurry, it's more clear. And one of them was Fibershed in 2016. That Fibershed event was just amazing to me. That's where I first heard Lonnie, who actually grows the wool that's in our Replenish Rambouillet yarn, when I heard her speaking, and it was so inspiring, and it was so hopeful. It was. I mean, they were showing slides about climate change and the things that need to change to impact climate change, and there actually is something that could turn it around, not just slow it down, but turn it around. And that was, a lot has to happen for that to actually materialize, but I had never heard anything like that before. It had just been, how can we slow it down so that it's, not going to happen in, 4 or 5 or 10 lifetimes. So Fibershed was a big thing. And this idea that there's a supply chain, right, for this wool, and the wool to the processor, to the yarn, to the fabric, to the item. And I just had this feeling like, okay, I want to be somewhere in that supply chain. It was like I could be part of this, and that made some things come into focus. And then the other thing related to connecting the growers is I was having a conversation with a mother and daughter at Black Sheep Gathering a couple of years ago, maybe around the same, that same year, and she had beautiful fleeces, the daughter, just gorgeous fleeces, and she and her mother were sitting there, I was talking with her about her fleeces, and the mother had a basket full of yarn sitting next to her. And she said, this is the yarn that we've been able to make with the fleeces. And, you have a knitting podcast and you do a lot of knitting. What suggestions would you give me for how to get this sold? Because I have it in a shop here in Eugene and it's just not selling. And I thought, okay, there's the thing. She can put it in a shop, and then, the shop has it there for people to see, but the shop can't tell her story. The textile center, I think, is where she had it. They can't really tell her story, and she can't really reach out. She's not connected to the knitting community. I mean, she was a knitter, but not a capital K knitter.
Right.
They had sheep, right? I mean, it was about having sheep. It wasn't about knitting the projects. And so it was kind of like this realization that, okay, Marsha and I have this community of people who love yarn, and they have the sheep and the beautiful fiber that can be made into the yarn. I can't make the yarn, and they can't reach the knitters. And so how do we kind of connect that part of the supply chain?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they had the most beautiful yarn and the most beautiful fiber. And for her, when she said, it wasn't selling, it's like, oh my gosh, How is this not selling? So
Yeah, and we've learned a lot about technology.
Yes.
Sometimes the hard way.
Yes, that is true. Still learning things
Yeah.
about the technology for sure. But that's been fun. I've actually enjoyed that. I actually listen to a lot of podcasts about podcasting and the podcast industry, and that's a whole that's a whole other aspect of this that, I'm sure our listeners don't need to hear about. But that technology and podcasting industry aspect of it has been really interesting for me to learn about too.
It's been educational on all kinds of levels. Yeah. So yes, 100 episodes, Kelly.
Yeah, I know, 100 episodes. So do you think we could do 100 more episodes?
Oh, yes. We have plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I think so. I have a lot more knitting in me.
Oh, I do too. if my hands hold up. And my backside doesn't get too large.
Right.
Actually, I have to tell you, because I listened to that episode, and talking about my backside, I thought, because I was going to be sitting here while we record, I decided to take the dog for a walk this morning. So,
just from listening to that?
Yeah, just listening to that made me think I have to get up and start moving. So, because I'll be sitting here, because recording takes us a while. So I had to get out and get moving. So,
well, good. You're a better woman than I.
I have one last thing
that
I want to say, and thank you, a huge thank you to Single Mom Power. That's Anna, and she lives in Denmark. And do you remember, Kelly, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about my honeymoon yarn?
Yes.
That I got on my honeymoon now that I'm divorced. And I've never done anything. I had started something, and I had been looking at vests, and I found a vest on Ravelry called Valor. It's Valour. It was in a book called The Coloresque Chunky Collection, and it was not available on Ravelry. But I could find the book on eBay, and Anna messaged me and said she had the book.
Oh, wow.
And so she offered to send it to me. And I said, oh, no, just make a copy of it or just scan it. And she said, it's more expensive to do that. It was less expensive just to mail it to me. So she sent the book, and it arrived. So I want to say thank you to Anna.
How nice.
She was very sweet. She also put in a bag of, gummy bears in there. I don't know. Maybe they were for Ben, but I ate them. And she put a little dog treat in there for Enzo. And a nice note. So I wanted to tell her thank you. And I've got the pattern, and I'm not sure what I'm going to cast on, but I think I'm going to make the vest.
Nice.
Out of that yarn.
Yeah.
So that was really, really nice of her to send that. And here's the thing. That's something that would not have happened if we didn't have the podcast.
That's true.
So I now have we have friends all over the world, Kelly.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Where everyone is that listens.
Yeah.
It's very amazing to me. So cool. We have great listeners.
Yeah. It's been a fun 4 years. Yeah. And it's been a nice respite because some not so fun things have happened in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And this has always been a really nice thing, always to look forward to recording and to look forward to the retreats that we've gone on, something fun to distract from some of because life always has some not so nice things going on.
Right.
And so it's always been nice to have this. Yeah.
And in some ways it came out of a not so nice situation. I mean, just the fact that we even started it came out of my woes.
Yes, and you mentioned just in passing about Robert, and I guess we should say, we may have talked about this before. I don't remember, but I got a call from Robert, when you were in your dark place with the job. And he said, Marsha, I'm really concerned about Kelly. She just sits in the spare room listening to podcasts and
knitting. Yeah.
and knitting. And I remember thinking at first, my first thought was, oh my gosh, what's going on with Kelly? And then I thought, well, her job is really difficult, and this is escape. This is how you're coping is with. I knew immediately you're just coping with podcasts and knitting because it helps.
Yeah, no, it helped tremendously. Yeah.
Yeah,
it really did.
So, he was really worried, and he wanted me to come down, and I think I did come down to see you because he was really worried that you were depressed, and you were just staying in that room knitting and listening to podcasts, and it's like, and I'm like, I get down there like, she's fine. There's nothing wrong.
This is just this is just how you handle your life when your life is not so great. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks with episode 101.
Yeah, we'll start our next 100. And just some housekeeping. We'll be starting our winter weave along on November 1st. Okay. So that's coming up. Don't worry, Marsha, you don't have to be tired.
Okay. Like suddenly my energy level just dropped.
You did weaving last year. You don't have to do weaving this year.
Yeah, I know I did weaving.
So I'm gonna try to do a little bit better job of what my vision of it was last year, of having like lessons to come out like every 2 weeks on the alternate weeks where we don't have a podcast. But I think I'll just do them as a blog post. I was trying to do them as a PDF that got delivered like a podcast, but I think I'll just do it as a blog post. And then I have figured out a way that I can get a PDF, so I'll be able to do that. So I'm excited about the weave along. I have some weaving challenges that I want to try to accomplish. It will go all winter to the end of March, so it's a long-term thing.
And then also we should probably mention too the learn along.
Yes.
That ends the end of November.
Yes. So you still have a little bit more than a month to learn something, in case you haven't learned anything.
I've learned a lot on mine.
Go learn something and report back by November 31st. Okay.
All right. I will see you for episode 101 in 2 weeks.
Okay. Bye.
Right. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2Us
doing our part for World Fleece. I need to do more research. Clearly, I need to do more research